And we are live. Perfect. So welcome everybody to the 5th edition of the GAD Talk Series. I am thrilled today to be introducing such a distinguished panel and a very timely topic as well, where the title of today's talk is How to Create Digital Networks in the Art World. My name is Sophie. I'm the founder of Global Art Daily. We're an independent art publication, and I'm based here in Japan. And so the panel today is made of Deborah Najar, who's the founder of ArtMavens, Nicole Ching, the founder of Museum 250, and Pauline Fossel, founder of Curator Grid. So before I read everyone's bio, I just want to take a moment to thank the panelists for their time and for accepting my invitation to this talk series. I foresee a very, very insightful talk today, and I really can't think of any better panelists to have this talk with. So a little intro, maybe. I just prepared this little bit of an intro. 2020 was the year of adjustments, to say the least. Travel restrictions, social distancing led to the new norm of working from home. And the art world was deeply affected. Physical exhibitions were put to a halt, museums closed for months on end, small galleries suffered, jobs were furloughed. And above all, I think networking opportunities, at least the physical ones, diminished. No more art fairs, conferences, exhibition openings where we usually meet and congregate as part of the art world. Those were all held on pause for the most part of 2020. But the silver lining is the digital transformation, right? As we hashtag worked from home, we were more than ever before scrolling on our Instagram feeds and getting our latest art news online, visiting virtual exhibitions, attending webinar after webinar after webinar. And so for many artists and curators that I've spoken to, 2020 was actually a much needed break in the frenzy of the art circuit. It was an opportunity to sit back and to expand horizons online, to learn about very, very niche topics that we didn't have the time or the mental space for before. And so with the art world transitioning online, and really that trend being accelerated last year, networking took on another form. So Instagram has been the social media of choice for the fine art industry, but 2020 made us realize its limitations. And we're joined today by founders of two very, very innovative apps and networking platforms. So we're very excited to learn more about them today, as well as the webinars and conferences. You know, we have a founder of, Nicole, founder of Museum 250, the symposium, based for Chinese art professionals. And she will give her take on holding a physical and how to kind of, what the transition was from the physical symposium to a more hybrid physical plus digital format. So let me read everyone's bio. So Deborah Najar is the founder of ArtMavens, a web and app-based platform for the global professional art community. She's also the co-founder of the Jean-Paul Najar Foundation, a museum for contemporary art previously located in Dubai's Al Circle Avenue. Among the first nonprofits in the UAE, the Jean-Paul Najar Foundation came about from a desire to offer diverse artistic experiences with strong emphasis on patronage, archives, and Western abstraction. During her tenure as museum director, the GPNF curated over a dozen solo and group exhibitions, published catalogs, and hosted a rich public program for varied audiences. Prior to this, she was the Middle East representative for Bonhams, founded and sold 2 e-commerce platforms, and spent 6 years building the Beers Middle East franchise. Deborah sits on the board of the Global Art Find Award, Gstadt's New Year's Music Festival, and heads up the Global Private Museum Network. And she lives in Geneva and is a graduate of the London School of Economics. Then we have Nicole Ching, who I know from back in the day. I'm very, very grateful for you being here. Nicole Ching graduated from UCL in classics and read for a master's in visual material and museum anthropology at Oxford, and was selected to be a Schwarzman Scholar at the Tsinghua University in Beijing. Her broad arts experience includes working at Sotheby's and Cambridge's Fitzwilliam Museum, as well as writing for Art Asia Pacific. She has worked as the International Communication Officer for the Long Museum, home to China's largest private collection. Nicole is passionate about unlocking the potential of private museums in China. As an advocate for stronger arts curricula in the Chinese education system, she hopes that Museum 250 will initiate more fluid conversations between institutional art institutions and China. And then we have Pauline Fossel, a native from Grenoble, France, launched Art Curator Grid in 2019. Art Curator Grid is the first professional social network centered around art curators, an online community that fosters connection between art professionals, institutions, galleries, and companies on a global scale. Pauline Fossel moved to Lisbon in 2013 to manage Alexandre Farteau's Ville's studio and Underdogs Gallery, with a master's degree in management, entrepreneurial management from Schema Business School in Lille, as well as an MBA exchange program from Concordia University in Montreal. She worked as a gallery assistant at Gallery Magda Danise in Paris, as well as the gallery manager at Magda Danise Gallery in Shanghai. And then between 2015 and 2017, she divided her time between Lisbon and Hong Kong, where she worked as the director of development at Hong Kong Contemporary Art Foundation, a nonprofit established with the goal of promoting and developing awareness of contemporary art in the Asian Art Hub. So that's it. That's quite a mouthful and quite a distinguished panel. Very, very much. Thank you for being here. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen because I prepared a short presentation about all of your platforms. And I think it will give the viewers a good little introduction of so ArtMavens, I'll go through ArtMavens, Museum 250, and then Art Curator Grid. And then as well, please feel free to jump in. It could be during this presentation or after, because I want to ask each one of you to present yourself, you know, what your platform is about. So first, ArtMavens. So here's the webpage. ArtMavens is the first platform, web and app-based, created for the professional global art community. The Mavens are experts in their fields who use the platform to share opinions and ideas, widening their network and furthering their art world. So it's an app that was launched last year by Deborah Najar, as well as Louise Hamlin, who's the founder of the Art Business Conference. And it's, well, that's kind of the symposium. It's free to download, and then it's some sort of social media / kind of a professional community. So you kind of have to get invited to be inside, or you can sign up and be screened, and then you can get inside the network. And once you're inside the network, you can you build your profile, kind of like using social media. You build your profile, you put a profile picture, and then you can start posting art world related news. So it's really all about the art world. And it's a great way to network because you're amongst a niche community already. You can engage in hot topics, podcast listings, you can post press release, you can participate, you have an event page where you can post certain events from your different organizations, and you can advertise them through the platform and outside too. And then they have a wonderful library with press releases, but also kind of resources for the art world, art businesses. I know they have a Brexit resource for art businesses. These are just some screenshots from the community feed. I've had the pleasure of joining and being active on the platform. I must say it was very, very nice experience, very seamless. And I really enjoy the community that's there. I feel like it's a small community, but a growing one. And it's all, you know, it's just all focused on the art world. And I think that's what we need in general. And we'll converse about that, about this need of, you know, being like having a filtered community where you can post things and, you know, other people will engage with it because we're in the same, you know, the same interest group. Here's the art resource library with the Brexit resources. And then we have the Museum 250. So that's Nicole's platform and initiative. So Museum 250, it's really a symposium series that was started in 2017. The platform has a distinct focus on being a resource for young people from all over China, many of whom largely work and inhabit large cultural institutions. And the Museum 250 aims to provide a place to converse, share ideas, and create a vibrant museum community. And they've had three, here's Nicole, they've had three symposiums so far. So they had 2018, which which was looking at new institutional models, China's cultural landscape by mid-century. So every time they host their symposiums in different institutions in China. So the first one was the Long Museum in Shanghai. Then there was the second one, 2019, Defining Institutions, Proposal for Museums of the Future, which was at the Xi Art Museum in 2019. And then the one in 2020, which I actually had I managed to attend because it was online. So I kind of clicked that link. Thanks, Nicole, for sending me that. So that the symposium was about the imperatives and challenges of collaboration. And I think it went a bit beyond the Chinese context and invited some speakers. I'm sure Nicole can talk more about this too. These are some screenshots that I took during the digital symposium. It was held at the Guangzhou, the Hair Art Museum in Shunde. And then in Chengdu, I think, right? And then they had the whole symposium was physical, but it was also live streamed. And that was interesting because people could kind of come in and watch for a little bit or for the whole day. And they were very, very interesting. It's an interesting series of talks. Keynote speaker, Daniela Arsham, huge. And then I think, very interesting talk by this keynote speaker. I think she was the chief curator of the Guangzhou Times Museum, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Nikita, so she's the chief curator of the Times Museum.
Exactly. And then what I found really interesting was one talk actually had a speaker that was not present, right? She was, I think, in the United States, and she was giving this talk virtually. And it was super interesting because the audience was live. I was watching from abroad, and then the speaker was also, kind of remotely speaking. And I thought that was a very, very interesting moment. And the talk was about communication, and communication as a process, and the models of communication, communication in a global context. Very interesting talk. And then, okay, we have Art Curator Grid. So that's Pauline's platform. So Art Curator Grid, which I also discovered last year, thanks to a recommendation from a fellow curator. And Art Curator Grid is an app. It's a kind of website. It's a platform.
No, it's web and mobile, but it's not an app.
Web and mobile. Yeah. It's web and mobile, and it's kind of in the same way as ArtMavens. You sign up, you have to get screened, and then you sign up, but it's specifically for art curators. And these can be independent curators or institutional, so curators working at institutions. And then in the same vein, you create your profile page. So this is Pauline's profile. You can put your bio. And then the great feature about this is that you can showcase and highlight all the exhibitions that you've worked on in a very, very attractive format. And I've actually used it, and it's really easy to upload pictures and images, and it looks really, really nice to this grid system. And so this is the network. So you have networks of curators, global network too, coming from Europe, but as well from Asia, which is happy to see. And then here you have the community feed. So whenever people post about their exhibitions or their projects or their interviews, it appears here. And you can comment, kind of like social media, you comment, you can like. And then the way you create exhibition posting, you can kind of exhibition archive or art project. It can be a publication, it can be a studio visit or an interview that you've done. And it's a really great way. And I thought that was also just, I saw this on your Instagram, Pauline. I thought I might share this. So they have a very great new feature with virtual exhibitions. And so Pauline, I recommend you to check her profile and see that post. But she was talking about how she wanted to collaborate with this artist, Filippo Minelli, for a while, but she didn't know exactly, what, that it was difficult to do, budget-wise, time-wise. And so she managed to curate this exhibition virtually on Art Curator Grid. And so the way it works, you have the curatorial text, you have the artwork list, artist info, press release. And it's a great way to kind of this is a URL that you can just share to other people who can look at this. And I don't think they need to be signed in the platform to do so. And it's just a great way to build exhibitions online. And I think Pauline has some plans to expand this. So I'm sure she'll talk more about that feature, especially. And that's it for now. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop talking because I've been talking for way too long. I wonder who wants to start, maybe by introducing a little bit more of their platform. Maybe Deborah, you could start us off by just introducing a little bit more of ArtMavens and your highlights from the past few months.
Thank you. Thanks, Sophie, for the great introduction and for taking the time to prepare all of that. Really appreciate it. So ArtMavens, as you said, came out really from a joint desire of Louise Hamlin, my wonderful co-founder and business partner, and myself, to deepen the connect between art professionals globally. And I think that we all have our networks and we all have our events that we go to, but invariably there seems to be a dynamic that shifts. And the regular touch points is what we really saw was lacking in that way. And it's true that most of the platforms that we're on are quite generic with a lot of information and really didn't enable that. So the idea started brewing in that way. Louise, of course, has this, like you, Nicole, amazing conference and symposium organizing experience and brilliant business in art business conference. I was managing the Global Private Museum, so a different kind of group traveling around the world. And I think we sort of gathered in wondering how we could put something together by art professionals for art professionals. And the idea was really to build a network and a community that would be generated by the users. So all of the content, all of the events, everything that happens is really about bringing together different actors and players of the art world to create that community and those opportunities. So that is, what we started doing. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And suddenly it felt even more urgent and important to find ways. We certainly started to feel disconnected, increasingly so. And that's kind of how ArtMavens came to be. So the center of our platform, the center of our activity is really to reconnect, to empower art professionals, but also to harness the potential of their networks and provide the tools. So the community is at the center, artmavens.io, and then progressively what you will see, and please join. And as you said, we are invitation only. The idea is to keep it for art professionals, so we can all introduce members, but we don't want just anyone coming in and adding to the dialogue. But the idea really is to start plugging in all the tools that are needed by our peers, so that we can create an ecosystem where we can all coexist and really connect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Maybe we can go to Nicole. Nicole, could you tell us just a little more about, if I missed anything, about Museum 250?
No, I would love to. I mean, first of all, thank you for, having me here, and sort of grateful to Sotheby's for bringing us together all those years ago. And, super happy to be on such a distinguished panel. And really, I think one thing, at least from, your introduction, Sophie, is that I guess in a way, community building has always been so essential to the arts, and, nothing more so has shown us that than sort of 2020. And so, I'm sort of really excited to have this conversation with you guys and sort of learn from what you've done in your respective ways. And I think, we'll go into this later, but sort of the digital aspect of community building has not been, before 2020, one of our strong points, or something that we engaged in whatsoever. And I think that sort of as soon as February hit, it sort of became a sort of glaring touch point of oh my God, we are sort of so focused on the physical, which we were, we were organizing conferences because in a way that's the sort of easiest way to engage. Because, as you said so wonderfully in your introduction, we really are a platform to engage young museum professionals that work in private museums in China. It's sort of as simple as that, you know, to be able to bring them together and to be able to sort of arm them with the tools that they need to navigate this industry. And, you know, obviously prior to 2020, the easiest way to do that was to get people together, you know, and through these conferences, through these professional, you know, development training workshops. And then, you know, I think one thing that's been really interesting for us this year is to sort of really think about how to transform those interactions that you have, you know, call it water cooler chat, you know, the sort of moments between, you know, talks and so on, where you have lunch and, you know, where actually like those meaningful conversations and relationships are forged, and how to replicate that online, which I mean, I found really difficult, but we have different ways, and, you know, I'm excited to talk about it with you all. But yeah, so I'd say that's one of the things we're thinking about. But in terms of the format, is still the same. We do a conference every year in a different part with a different museum in China, in part to highlight the sort of, you know, very different, I guess, cultural hubs that China has. When many people who don't know the landscape well, you know, you'll know Beijing and Shanghai, but will you know Chengdu as well, or Shunde, when there's actually a lot going on? So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Great, perfect. Yeah, we'll get into these conversations a bit later on. And then maybe Pauline, could you also introduce our Curator Grid or anything that I missed in my presentation?
Sure. Thank you first, yeah, Sophie, for inviting me and having the chance to talk with you guys, Deborah and Nicole. I think like that's subject that are in our head on a daily basis, all of this. So I think it's always nice to be able to, you know, share together. And so I think, no, you presented very well at Curator Grid. It's a professional art community as well, but centered around the work of art curators. We are starting to actually open the ecosystem of the institutions and venues, because we just launched our profiles for venues. And of course, very soon the artists as well, that will be invited by the curators of the platform. So it's as well creating this ecosystem around curators. Why? I think on my side, I always were very interested about what was happening digitally in the art world, and I was working, you said, in Hong Kong for a private foundation. Well, I was the one fundraising, so I was working with the curator, and I was the one trying to fundraise for the shows, and well, I realized that you had the art market online, but the institutional world was not so much there, that you have like those networks that they were very local or national. And I really did believe that having like a global network more directed to the institutional world would be amazing, you know, because as well with the activities I was carrying at that time. And so I thought like the curators were, you know, the center of it all, that they were the one working directly with the artists, they were the one working within the institutions, they were the one bringing and working with the artists to bring art to the public. So all of a sudden they were like, you know, that very interesting connector. And so yeah, launched the platform almost 2 years ago now. We have almost 600 curators that are independent or institutional and opening up now. So, and they are really from everywhere. We have people from Asia, from Africa, from the US, from you know, Brazil, from like, honestly, it has been very, very enriching to talk to all these professionals, you know, from everywhere with their challenges. And I cannot go against what Deborah and Nicole are saying about, you know, the pandemic and so on. It's true that we need communities. This is necessary for everything that happened on. But there is one thing that I realized still is that, you know, if we have chosen the art world, it's because it's a physical world. Mm-hmm. So the, you know, everything we're doing with Art Curator Grid is acknowledging this. This will never replace, like, you know, real relationship or seeing art in real. But we can bring things to enrich it, and the network that we are having and the exhibition tool. It's too bad you didn't show the main map, because that's basically on the exhibition tool, the whole point is to create a visual representation of your exhibition. So it can be a 100% digital exhibition, but it can also, the point is to basically propose it to institutions and venues for them to enrich their public program. So you build your show. It's very simple. The curators of the independent or institutional can build the show. And you have informative points, you have the artworks, but basically you bring to your viewer way more information about the exhibition itself. So it's not trying to replace reality, not trying to reproduce reality. It's really what's the curatorial concept, the artworks, and all the content that you can add. So virtual visit, like studio visit, artist statement, work in progress. It can be iPhone videos, whatever. It's what would you want to bring to the public. Even if they come to see your show, they can leave and go and look for more information. So that's what we do. I'm far away from being alone because we are 9 people, so it's a constant work of 9 people. So yeah, that's
great. No, great. And I think this point about, you know, this knowledge sharing economy and that we are in a way of this, that you viewed your Art Curator Grid, this platform, as just being some kind of almost like an archive, right? I see it as like you can put your exhibition there and you have the information.
Yeah, it's exactly that, Sophie. It's exactly that. It's an archive, and this is an archive for curators. That's going to be soon an archive for institutions, because it's all of a sudden you can archive conceptually your exhibitions, the artworks, but also all the content that you want to put around it, so the research and so on. So yeah, it becomes a very interesting platform, and the more the time is going to pass, the more it's going to become a very, very interesting research platform as well.
Exactly. So, okay, that brings me to my kind of first question for you all, and I think you have different perspectives, so it might be interesting. I mean, that's a question maybe you want to ask for founders of these new networks, right? We already have social networks in a way. We have Instagram, we have LinkedIn. If we want to put if we're an independent curator, we can put a website together and we can put our archives of images, etc., on a separate website. We can advertise that website on Instagram or something like that. I mean, I think in China, WeChat, and I mean, there's like a whole other kind of Chinese social media. I'm sure they probably have thoughts about that, which I'd love to know about. So what is the need, like what have you found lacking as art professionals representing the museum space or the independent curatorial space, or the kind of young museum space in China as well? What have you found to be lacking in social media today, like features for you as arts professional? It can be.
Who start? I can start.
You can start.
It's one of my favorite topics. How social media today does not respond to our needs. Yeah, it's for me. It was the whole point of creating Art Curator Grid, is that it wasn't responding to our professional needs. So for me, we are using Instagram mainly, but it puts an emphasis on images that is too strong. I think like our text is very important in our work. So it was to kind of build something that could put on the same level images, curatorial text and everything that goes in the writings. And LinkedIn, it's a very good tool, but it's very broad. It doesn't necessarily again respond to exactly what we need. And I think in the past few years, like it has been harder and harder to work with Instagram. Like the algorithm make it really hard to discover new things. I think that's a part of our work as well, like research, discover. And now it has been very, very difficult to, and you can discover, but all of a sudden, when you do research, you will need to have something to mark and note, and because if not, you will never see it again. And as you are following, I don't know how many thousands of people, you never see again the thing that you thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So
screenshotting, and it's just like,
it's becoming a bit complicated, and that's why basically I think.
I mean, yeah, it's a very saturated place, Instagram. Deborah or Nicole, do you have any thoughts?
Just to add to Pauline, I think we also realized that there was an information overload and maybe a need for something more tailored to our specific needs. And I compare this to moving houses, right? You move into a new apartment, and if you take all your old furniture with you, you're playing Tetris with stuff that doesn't belong. And the beauty of starting a new network, joining a new network is, you're maybe at a different stage of your life or with different imperatives, and you start to really think how to build your network. I still think there's a lot of work to do, and I think we're all trying to find solutions. Building your network, increasing your circle of professional contacts, I think we all kind of know how to do. And as Nicole said, it's nicer at a conference with, canapes and a glass of wine, but there are ways that we can more or less do that. Maintaining that network, turning it into a productive and effective network is what really interests me in our process. So I think that there's room to.
Important point. It's kind of starting fresh, how to build a network, because I feel like if we're on Instagram and LinkedIn, like it is saturated, and we feel like we're trying to scale down maybe our networks. Like, why is this? Why am I following this person all of a sudden? Or why does this pop up on my feed, right? And you kind of want to. Yeah, I love that idea of this starting fresh and moving places and that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to call a network of 3,000 people on your LinkedIn, so something to think about.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, do you have any thoughts to share about social media? And because I know you're quite active on Instagram, or you were at some point, and I think you still are. Or I follow you.
But I think what's interesting when we speak about social media is that it ranges geographically, right? So I think in terms of when we think of the art world, we think about the international art world. And I think, as sort of like Deborah and Pauline have said, is that, in terms of what we experienced last year, is there was a total oversaturation of content, whether they be Instagram live streams or sort of like endless webinars, which we're on now, which is great because I think that, they differ in terms of thoughtful content versus, we feel like we need to, compete and engage in this landscape, and therefore we're just putting out things that aren't, considered at all. And I think that's been really difficult. But I do think that also when we speak about social media, it's incredibly important to, acknowledge, I guess, the range of platforms that exist, because, when you're in China, you don't use Instagram at all, only a very, very, very small percentage of the population. And I guess what is so interesting about the sort of cultural landscape in China generally is that it's so inextricably intertwined with digitization. Sort of pre-2020, it was already, the way in which WeChat and sort of Weibo and other digital platforms were so integrated into the everyday. In a way, it was nothing new, and as a result, I guess they were sort of uniquely prepared for the pandemic, as audiences from the beginning felt comfortable with online programming. And I think one thing that's been really interesting for us is that this notion of live streaming is something that I think really came to the fore in 2020. But actually, if you look in China, people have been live streaming for forever, on apps like Bilibili, Xiaohongshu, and things that we don't engage with at all, but people in China use, and they make their millions out of doing that, exactly. And I think there's also interesting in a way, because you also see a level of oversaturation in that, and I think what is interesting about China is that because it's been locked down since January, things have been able to take place physically. And so I think there's been a sort of like weird swapping over of where, you were so sort of oversaturated with digital content, and that was great for, 3-4 years. But now that, the world sort of stopped and paused a little bit, but then the one place that can do things physically, it's sort of gone in the extreme, of like, okay, suddenly a museum is like, well, no one else is doing shows, so suddenly we can get all of these works on loan from these museums that aren't open. So let's do, 5 shows a year instead of 3, and that sort of brings like a really interesting perspective in terms of what's happening in the mainland as well. But yeah, I mean, I sort of am still figuring these questions out, you know, and I think platforms like, you know, ArtMavens and Art Curator Grid, there's nothing really like that in terms of meaningful social network in China. You know, LinkedIn barely works. I think that, you know, art professionals kind of crave that connection, because at the end of the day, you know, a WeChat group, which is what most people use, you can only have max 500 people. And the reality is, when, you know, imagine a WhatsApp group of 500 people, that's not meaningful engagement. You know, that's just 3 people, you know, sending relentless messages about nothing, or, you know, pushing their own content, but, you know, it doesn't allow you to engage in a meaningful way. So I'm super excited to, you know, hear from, you know, both Pauline and Deborah, and, you know, maybe there's something that we can do together in the mainland.
Very interesting, because I think you and you brought this point of the live stream, and I was very curious actually, because when I logged in and I watched your the symposium, the last symposium, it was like an event page, and then you could log in, and it was for free as well. But perhaps as well for people who want to monetize on these kinds of live stream, you could actually kind of, you know, it's an event page, right? It's like, and then you get a ticket, and then you go and you log into this technology, and then you look at the talk that way. I feel like it's very interesting, because we really don't know, you know, outside of China, what's going on inside in terms of the social media, and I find that like fascinating. So
yeah, I mean, one thing we really wanted to make sure was that there are all these live stream platforms that exist, right? Like, and with an art focus in mind. So there's Arttron, which we sort of simultaneously live stream on, and Zai Art. But those apps don't really work very well outside mainland China at all. And obviously, one of the things we wanted to make sure of was that, you know, the conference is international in its scope, with a China focus at its center, but that's what we really wanted to make sure that did work. You know, so I think there are a lot of interesting niches within the like Chinese social media internet landscape still to work out, to, you know, really think about how you can create a platform, or, you know, that exists, that truly connects people internationally. But I'm glad you liked it, and you're right. Like, if I was a I don't know, blogger on Xiaohongshu, and I was doing a makeup tutorial, there are definitely ways that, you know, you could monetize that. But, you know, we felt, as a sort of very niche art conference, that you know, we were just sort of happy to engage with our audiences.
yeah. It's also public service what we're doing, right? We're all just trying to educate people. Yeah. Maybe Deborah or Pauline, you could take that in terms of, could you share some highlights of your app or platform usage from the past few months? Like, did you find any kind of user who really frequented the app often, who posted a lot, and kind of a surge of user activity around a certain post or a certain event? Is there anything that comes to mind, like an example that you want to share from your community?
Well, no, because there is actually a lot of people posting. So I wouldn't like bring one specifically, but no, we do have people posting like on a day-to-day basis. Some are coming since I've been there for a while, so they come back and they post. Some others are just joining, so they build their portfolio, you know, the one that you've seen, so they post a lot at once. But no, we have like people. I wouldn't tell you like specifically one post, but it's concerning exhibitions. Now it's a bit more complicated, but exhibition, publications, studio visits as well. We have more and more curators like posting about the studio visit, and using the exhibition tool as well. So it's pretty various. And then we have when you are a curator on the platform, you show like the research on profiles, so you can research by expertise or localities right now, and we do have people like researching and connecting, messaging each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I think what's most exciting for you is the partner, like you said, the future partnerships with the institutions. So kind of getting a lot more museums involved and their curators, and then the exhibition, the kind of live exhibition that you create, the virtual exhibition space where people can really go in and create exhibitions that are just hosted on Art Curator Grid, right?
Yeah, it's really it was really the need of bringing a new way of doing a show online, and as well not just having a show online, but having a show online within a community. So yes, it's exactly that. It's to have like the institution on board with their audience, because the whole point is that it's for them to communicate, and that all the institution win from each other audience as well. So yeah, the goal is also to have the public that are enjoying art. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Deborah?
Well, we're as you know, because you've been invited on the platform, we're still invitation only and not for very long. But what's been really interesting for us has been to see how the different tools on the platform came into use. So it really comes to life when you download it, either in the App Store or on the Google Play Store. But what we're able to do is, by creating subgroups, is to really welcome in, and that's what we're super excited that we've onboarded some trade associations and museum groups who have come in, created their own subgroup and used it for their internal communication, for their event announcements, even to host their documents and research. So creating that library that you so kindly showed on your PowerPoint. So that's quite exciting. And then of course, they can reach out to a wider group. So let's say a dealers association, which is a very concrete example, can then post their news or share whatever it is they wish to on the community feed, and then everyone gets to see it. So it kind of enables, you know, those different levels, and we see that working. There's a few other features that stand out for us. I think we were all mentioning our, you know, digital fatigue, and, you know, not another webinar or OVR, this present one excluded. And we receive so many emails every week. So we've just kicked in a simple feature, you know, compiling all the coming up events. And we're finding that our users are really happy to no longer look at the same with the press releases. So our corporate members are listing their press releases, and it's much easier. You know, like Pauline, we really believe artists, critics and writers, historians, curators are really at the center of everything that we do, and that's, you know, that's the essence. So again, trying to cater for that, but the roadmap is extensive, and the next launch will be a rollout for freelancers. So we've developed ArtMavens Pro, which will enable freelancers to be connected with opportunities globally.
That's fantastic. I think, yeah, you mentioned that event page. I've used it personally. I really, really enjoy it because you can see it day per day. There's all these webinars about the art world. Everything is very niche. And so I found out about some symposium that I wanted to attend, for example, that Louvre Abu Dhabi symposium that they organized. And I found the link on your, you know, on the ArtMavens event page, and it was grateful because I get those emails. I'm subscribed to the Louvre Abu Dhabi newsletter, but for some reason it went somewhere else, and, you know, you forget about these things. So just checking like almost daily, or it can be a weekly thing. You know, it's not like this kind of instant social media that we're used to, these emails popping up every time. Like, I feel it's a way more calmer and more efficient way of using these networks, just checking in once a day, once a week, seeing, okay, I want to attend these webinars this week, and scheduling your time that way. And
yeah,
I really appreciate that.
I think an interesting byproduct of the pandemic has been the creation of, well, not spare time, but it's true that as we're no longer, you know, driving back and forth an hour to go to a meeting, or flying, you know, 8 hours to attend a brilliant conference, which we wish we could do, honestly. But as we are not, there's suddenly a little more time. And I mean, I'd love to, you know, to hear your thoughts about that. But I've certainly felt that there's been time to go into greater depth, and to maybe have a slower but more inclusive look at our professional arena and where it's going, right? And I've really enjoyed that.
No, agreed. And it feels more, yeah, like people are being accounted for, and just as you said, it was a needed maybe slow down from the frenzy that was happening over the past few years with the art fairs and the do you miss art fairs? That's the kind of question I just thought, all of you. Do you miss art fairs, Art Basel, all of this, Freeze? I mean, it was a great way to meet so many people at once and then to see them again at like the next event. I mean, I miss going at least to like 1 or 2 art fairs a year. That was...
Yeah, come on, that's fun.
That's fun, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's a particular moment. But I wouldn't necessarily put it on just art fairs. It can be many different type of events, biennale and so on. But I think that's fun. You see a lot of things, even if at one point you can't even digest it, But at least you are able to see a lot of things and meet. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and I mean, I've done great encounters thanks to art fairs and so on. So yeah, I do miss them.
Yeah. And thinking ahead of the future, I mean, what are some of your kind of personal preferences when it comes to those digital events? Like, do you think webinars are successful? And what has been like a highlight of like a digital networking event for the past few months? Like, I'm just curious. It can be like it would be like a webinar, or would be like a private talk, or public talk, or, I mean, I guess for you, Nicole, it would be, your symposium.
I mean, I'd love to jump in this, and that I think, webinars are so great for learning things, and being able to access that information that normally you wouldn't have time for, and maybe even have access to. And I think in terms of networking, what's great is that, now Deborah and Pauline, we know each other, and we'll be able to sort of, take that relationship on, virtually after this conference. But I think for the people watching, for example, past writing comments on the chat or whatever it may be after, that's something I've been thinking about, like, how do you connect those connections? Like, what is the thing that, because, do these virtual, how do you say, like, networking events work? Like, I haven't personally hosted one, so I wouldn't be able to tell you, but, with our conference that just happened in December of 2020, one thing we were really thinking of, like you were saying, was how to replicate this hybrid experience, right? Because at one point, like in the mainland, people are able to travel freely. And one of the beautiful things was that because no one could go anywhere else, we actually had, all the sort of amazing people that have supported us over the years come together for this conference in Shunde, which is, a small sort of city in the south of China. And that was really beautiful, because normally, people would be here, there, and everywhere. And we also had incredible, reception from our live streaming, because suddenly people had time and they're at home. And, because we really upped our digital capacity and our live streaming capacity, and marketing on that front, we suddenly had, a lot more people watching from all over, which is really a beautiful thing. But then what we couldn't figure our heads around was that, for us, one of the mainstays of our whole symposium weekend is that we do these very small professional development workshops, where we invite young museum professionals from all different sort of private museums in China, and we bring them together, and every time the workshop addresses a different need. And this year, we really wanted to focus on the Greater Bay Area, which obviously is not just, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, but it's also, Hong Kong, it's also Macau. And right now, none of those cities can travel to one another, which seems bizarre, considering that from where we were at the museum and hosting the conference, to drive to Hong Kong, it would be an hour max, so we were sort of like, it was interesting conceptually, because, we had this sort of like very like liminal but very concrete thing that separated us. And Parasite in Hong Kong very graciously hosted our Hong Kong workshop participants. And the idea was, okay, they had a physical event in Hong Kong, we had a physical event in Shunde, and we'd be connected via live link over Zoom, so everyone had their own screens and so on. And that was our way of trying to sort of replicate, at least people are mingling with people. But then if I were to sort of be honest, it's really hard because, okay, the people in Hong Kong met each other and it was great. The people in the mainland met each other, it was great. But it's really, I don't know, I found it really hard to sort of be able to connect those people, in that way, to really transcend that physical, digital sort of space.
Digital.
So I'd be really from, Deborah and Pauline, how they're thinking about that.
Very interesting point. Do you have any thoughts to share on this phygital hybrid, the future of these events, going forward?
I think it just a complete side note, but isn't it wonderful how artistic creation has already addressed that? And there was a brilliant project in the late 60s by post-minimal artist Keith Saunier, and it was a direct stream, radio link and telephone of a conversation from East Coast to West Coast in the US. And we're kind of, fast forward 50 years on, but we're kind of thinking the same things and trying to figure out how to reconnect. So sorry, just a side thought, but definitely something that occupies also a lot of our preoccupation is how to do that. I also, I have to say that one thing that I have really enjoyed was, to come back to your question, Sophie, was the exhibition walkthroughs. And it has felt during this time that the small walkthroughs with exhibitions, one was able to get more time and more attention and more connection. And so for me, that was, maybe one of the highlights that came out. And also interestingly, seeing how some of the larger galleries were ready to go completely OVR, whereas many of the smaller galleries had to find really quick solutions. And that was really interesting to watch as well over the last 12 months.
I think, the themes that come up is the focus back on the art, the sense of that we have more time to really dive in and research and read, and we want to have these archives in order to learn more about these about them, and webinars as well as learning opportunities. And then Nicole's point I thought was very interesting. It's kind of this super localized effect that this digital interconnectedness has created, that we don't need to be in the art capitals anymore necessarily if we're living online and doing these things. We could be in peripheries, and then we could connect peripheries together. But of course, comes with challenges, as Nicole said. It's hard to translate that physical connectedness, online. Yeah, Pauline, do you have any thoughts about?
No, I share everything that was said. I think that's the webinars, and I did a class like a week ago or something. We were like 10 from a bit everywhere, but mainly Africa and Brazil, Cape Verde, Angola. It was really the teacher he was in Berlin. I think it's about the learning. You get access to things that you wouldn't get access to necessarily. And connect with people that is still a connection, because there is a discussion that's been raised. So definitely for me, that's the take here, those discussions.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that we can have these super international conversations, and that makes me happy, to be honest, because it's all of Global Art Daily. I created this as like my platform to connect people from all over that I've met in my past travels, or that I connected to, and that I want to connect these localized places together, because that's what global means in a way for me. Okay, great. Let's see, we are almost running out of time. This has been it's 5 minutes left. maybe one question I wanted to ask, we talked about the physical plus digital hybrid aspects, social media. Yes, I had this question that we touched upon already, which was how to leverage remote work, because it might still be our reality for the near future, remote work and digitalization or hybrid work, how to leverage that to continue to build meaningful relationships, you know, in the art world specifically, and how that differs perhaps across continents. It's a huge question, but we touched upon that. I think, Deborah, you had some great points about, you know, it's about building your network, right? It's about being very conscious and very intentional with your digital network, as you would be with your physical network, right?
Yeah, and I think it's especially important because we're becoming more and more localized and isolated, you know, especially with these circumstances. So it's really important to be purposeful. And I think especially when I think of young entrants into the professional arts arena and who've been stunted in their development and their growth, their ability to go to events, meet people and so forth. So it is super interesting to see all these different mediums and platforms emerging, facilitating that. Louise and I have been building our company without seeing each other over the last literally 11 months. We have not seen each other. So this is the kind of world we are in. We have built a business in the times of COVID. And it's the craziest thing. They say a business partner should be chosen more carefully than a love partner. And we're now doing this through Zoom. But I wonder if I've recently come onto, and I'm really interested to have your thoughts, international perspectives and different professional perspectives. There's a new recent platform called Clubhouse. And for those who don't know it, where you can walk into a conversation that is taking place, and it's fascinating. The content, we're going back to the data overload that we've mentioned in other social networks, where it's not, I'm so sorry to use the word curated, but where it's not targeted, where there's no quality control. But again, a very interesting alternative to networking. And I'd love to have, I see Nicole, I think that you're probably already active on it. I don't know if you haven't built an opinion yet on where that's going.
Do you mean, is it House Party or which?
No,
but I like that too. That was a COVID
another. That's to have some party. Drinks, you know.
Yeah.
Hours.
Yeah. It's a sort of similar concept, but yeah.
Yeah, it's similar. No, it's a social media platform, and whereas Instagram is based on imagery, this one is based on audio. So if you will, the podcasts are live and you can just plug into them. So I will send the three of you a link, and then we can have this conversation offline, because I'm still trying to process what it is and how it can help our community as an add-on.
Oh, wow, please do. That sounds super, super interesting. I hadn't heard about it, but I'm glad to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, audio, I've heard audio is the new wave. It's like, Google Home, like Alexa, and podcasts. And I mean, audio, is a new form that's still been unexplored, maybe untapped. Because the visual social media, it's there already, but like audio, very, very interesting. Okay, maybe I'll just ask one last question and then we'll wrap up the talk. Let's give some advice maybe for people watching us, for emerging artists, emerging curators, emerging museum professionals. I think I'm piggybacking off of what you said, Deborah, thinking of like this generation that really comes in right now into the art world at such a time. And that's also kind of the reason why we're hosting this talk. It's to realize, hey, you have all of these options. You have these digital networks that you can join. That it's really about putting yourself out there and building a network intentionally and not just thinking of Instagram or being crushed by the algorithm if you're an artist and you want to exhibit and you so any kind of advice for the emerging curators, emerging artists, emerging in your line of profession?
I'll start then. Yeah, I think like we need to see the positive aspect of the future, and I think like for young curators, I would say like, yeah, come and have a look at what we do. There is people with experience that you can learn from and talk to, and I think that's the beauty of when you start, is that you are like a sponge, and you can take all like advice and make your own opinion about them, but yeah, let's go, that's what I would say.
Great. Yeah, so I will leave probably in the description box of that YouTube video, there's the link to the Art Curator Grid, and so people can how does it work? Like people contact you, contact Art Curator Grid in order to be selected?
Yeah, they need to apply, so they need to go and join the community. If they are a curator, they can put their curator. If not, they can put their viewer, and then you have different categories. For the curators, we are actually looking into creating a profile for young curators, because we have curators who are still in doing studies or don't have like enough shows and so on, because there is criteria to enter the platform as a curator. However, we have been connecting with a lot of aspirational curators who are studying, and we let completely the door open, and if we can connect them in any way to curators of the platform and help them and so on, we do it. So and we keep them like in the loop, because we're going to get like that profile for young curators as well, where they won't have maybe all the features that the curators of the platform have, but enough to start building that network and so on. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And maybe Deborah, Nicole, advice for young
yeah, I think very similar advice to Pauline, and I heard a really interesting snippet from the CEO of a major American large investment bank, and this junior asked him to be his mentor and bullied him to be his mentor, and the gap in seniority was huge, and the kid said, "For every hour of mentorship you give me, I will give you a month-end report on what's new and fresh and exciting in our industry and in the world." And I thought that was such a great barter, where, as Pauline said, a young curator, a studying curator who wants to have, I was going to say Germano Salant, but who wanted to have an amazing curator mentor him, can offer also something in counterpart. And that's an interesting way to look at it. To everyone else in our community, please support your museums, please support your galleries, please support the artists. It's a really tough time, and anything is a help. And also, this is the best time to be building those relationships, because the primary market needs the support. The museums need the support. Join the groups now and really become a part of your community.
Love that. Very inspiring. Love these. And then Nicole, maybe last parting words.
Gosh, it's a lot of pressure to give the final bit of advice, and not sure I have, anything superb to add on to the wonderful words that Pauline and Deborah had to say. But I also will say that, on the topic of digital networks, I think that, they're there as tools for you to use, and for you to, in a way, take advantage of. And I think one important thing is to remember, like, don't let it take advantage of you, like they're there for you to really, to help you out. And, if you don't feel obliged to do anything, and just remember that, you have your sense of self, and all of these are tools to sort of like help you further that sense. So yeah, that's one thing that I would say in terms of digital networks.
The tools, exactly. They're tools. They don't define who you are. Like, you are your own person, and you should use these tools, and in these professional tools. And I feel like that's could be the last kind of thought that I have is, you know, these are all, you've built great platforms that help professionals, you know, get ahead. And that's really important to kind of separate the professional from the personal, especially nowadays that everything is on one app or everything seems very kind of, you know, all one. It's important to kind of keep that separation and to grow your professional network, but know that it's a tool. Exactly. Beautiful words. So thank you all so much for today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It went really fast, like I didn't, you know. So this will be now recorded and available on YouTube under the same link. And thank you all very much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.